Welcome to the Effective Emotional Intelligence Training. In this training, we shall consider the fundamentals of emotional intelligence, self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, managing relationship through emotional intelligence. Then finally, we'll conclude with moderating emotional intelligence. Every single participant from this training is expected to understand how to label emotions correctly and manage their relationships with others effectively well. Secondly, the participant is expected to have an improved skill in self-awareness, social awareness, self-management, and relationship management. Finally, participants are expected to understand how to improve, maintain, manage, or moderate emotional intelligence. Now, in the part one of this particular training, we shall consider or we'll start with fundamentals of emotional intelligence. The outline for this part one will be considering an overview of emotions, emotional intelligence, more like an introduction to emotional intelligence, then the dimensions of emotional intelligence and the benefits of emotional intelligence. Now, let's start with the emotions. Emotions are strong feelings which are a result of circumstances, mood, or relationship of an individual with others. It is a person's internal state of being. Emotions is an affective state of consciousness in which a person experiences joy, sorrow, fear, or hate, etc. Emotions also is an instinctive or intuitive feeling well distinguished from reasoning or knowledge. So it means, explaining this, emotions itself is a strong feeling of an individual which is as a result of their circumstances, their mood, or relationship with others. Now, what are the various examples of emotions? It includes love, happiness, sadness, disgust, fear, surprise, anger, joy, trust, bitterness, jealousy, loneliness, anticipation, kindness, friendliness, shame, pity, envy, hatred, indignation, disdain, etc. Now, let's consider what exactly is emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is the ability of an individual to recognize their own emotions and those of others, to discern between these emotions differently, to discern between these different emotions and label them appropriately in order to adapt to an environment or achieve an objective. So emotional intelligence is just an ability of an individual to recognize their own emotions and those of others, discern between them very well, discern between these different emotions and label them appropriately. So this is the basics of emotional intelligence. So emotional intelligence is also known as emotional quotient, emotional intelligence quotient, or emotional leadership. About emotional intelligence, emotional intelligence enables an individual to monitor their own emotions and that of others. It guides their thoughts, their behaviors, and actions, as well as responses towards others as when they use emotional information. So, a practical example is when someone is very angry, that you use emotional intelligence. Since you've understood the fact that this person is already angry, how do I approach this person? That's a use of emotional intelligence in relationship management or in relating or interacting with such person. So this is one of the benefits of emotional intelligence. Then emotional intelligence moderates, that's a moderate emotional intelligence levels a moderate emotional intelligence level helps an individual to communicate effectively well, reduce anxiety and stress, as well as diffuse conflict, improve relationship, and adequately empathize with people. So it means an individual with emotional intelligence, good emotional intelligence level, such as a moderate emotional intelligence level, can effectively diffuse conflict, can effectively manage a relationship, reduce anxiety, unnecessary anxiety in a relationship or in their relationship with people. Next, the four dimensions of emotional intelligence includes self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management. These are very hot topics, and we're going to dissect them individually in the subsequent parts of this training. So let's move along to the benefits of emotional intelligence. It promotes better teamwork. When you understand people, when you understand emotions very well, then you get to understand people excellently well. When you understand, you get to also understand how to relate with people excellently well. You improve your social and people skills as well, such that you can effectively relate with people. Then, emotional intelligence promotes self awareness, it promotes self control. It also promotes the ability to adjust and deal with change. Emotional intelligence provides the ability, it provides the individual with an ability to handle a tough conversation with anyone. So these are a few benefits of emotional intelligence. So now let's start with self-awareness as a key discussion, as a key topic for our conversation. Now, under self-awareness, we're going to have an overview of it, how also what influences personality, and as well as the ways to improve self-awareness. Now, self-awareness is not the same as self-consciousness. It is an awareness of your own true personality or individuality. Self-awareness is the ability to objectively evaluate yourself, manage your own emotions, align your own behaviors with your own values, and understand how others perceive you. So it's more like you with self-awareness, you can evaluate yourself effectively, manage your own emotions, align your own behaviors with your values, and as well as understand correctly how others perceive you. This is self awareness. Now, let's go ahead to talk about the objectives. Why should you even consider self-awareness, or why should you care about self-awareness? It will help you to appreciate and maintain your uniqueness, the uniqueness of your own personality. Oftentimes, we've seen people in trying to adapt to other people's opinion and views, they tend to twist their own personality such that they don't understand themselves anymore. So this self-awareness is very imperative. It helps you to understand yourself and help you align yourself with your values, such that you don't keep bending and bending to other people's values, such that you lose your own personality. Then, self-awareness helps you to understand and manage your emotions in order to align them with your own personal values, such that you have values, but you may have some struggling emotions you're struggling with. So you understand that you're still a work in process, and you keep working on yourself such that you can align them with your real value, your core value, what actually forms your personality. Then thirdly, manage self-awareness will help you manage positively, will help you manage and positively influence the way or the perception of others about your personality. So this is what self-awareness does for the individual. Now, what factors influence the personality? The factors that influence personality includes the environment. It also includes emotions, includes thoughts, words, actions, behaviors, characters. Of course, studies have come to show how people's environment can frame their personality. Of course, where the norms of a society, norms of a community can affect a person's identity, a person's the personality of an individual. Then emotions. For instance, a person who consistently does not, let's for instance, anger, a person who consistently does not manage their anger can develop a bitter personality with regards to other people's perception. So it is very imperative that every single individual understands how these emotions also can influence their personality and also how they are perceived, how their personality is perceived. They will talk about thoughts. Thoughts can frame the personality of a person such that because from the thoughts, there's a step to action, and there's a step in words and there's a step in action because they are aligned. The thoughts, the words, and actions, they all align. So from the thoughts you have the words, and from the words you have actions. So these three common up have a way of influencing the personality of an individual. Then we'll go ahead and talk about the behavior. The consistent behavior of an individual will form their character. Will say, oh, this is how this person behaves. So that's more like a perception of a particular individual. For instance, if you have an angry boss, you say, this boss is always angry all the time. So that's more like an issue. So everybody understands and label this boss angry or difficult or bitter. So these are ways or factors that influence personality. So now let's go ahead to talk about how then can an individual improve their self-awareness. One of the ways is to ask from trusted friends who can help or who can provide credible information or trusted information, non-colored or quoted information. They tell you the way it is. They tell you this are the things you can improve on. You're a great person, but this is the things you can improve on. You don't want to ask people who want to distort your personality or who definitely think less of you. Then we'll go ahead to talk about write down your goals. With regards to self-awareness, there are things you want to improve on yourself. So you want to write goals and begin to improve on that. So you notice things about yourself that you definitely want to work on. So you identify a particular flaw and you begin to work on that flaw until it is improved. We move on to the next one that says look at yourself objectively. That you might have to do an evaluation on yourself, a constructive one at that, and keep a journal. So from time to time, the things that you improve on, you celebrate your wins, and also you keep improving on yourself. Then you go ahead you can meditate, take personality tests, and also psychometric tests as well. Then you can perform daily self-reflection and personal appraisal and even personal reporting, more like you have a diary and you're writing down the things that needs to be improved on. Then let's go on to self-management. It is the third portion of this training. So now let's discuss in detail what we're going to be having in self-management. We're going to talk about self-management as an overview, have the dimensions of self-management and the key areas we want to discuss on self-management. Then, what then is self-management? It is the act of taking responsibility for your own actions, doing things without requiring an external supervision. It refers to having the required control and mastery over your time, activities, and workflow. It means that you take responsibility. You understand that you're solely responsible for your actions, that whatever you do within the workplace or within the workspace is your action and you are solely responsible for it. So this is self-management. The self-management also is your ability it's your ability to decide on objectives and how and when these objectives are to be implemented with the necessary actions that are required in the implementation process, with adequate measures to handle the responsibilities, and also how you're going to be accountable to these goals that you have decided. Automatically, this means you are setting goals, you are setting objectives, and you're deciding how these goals are going to be accomplished. the method of implementation, how you are going to go about it, and at the end of the day, you begin to implement them, and you are accountable for it. So meaning you've listed the goal, you've broken them down in steps, and you're beginning to take steps and begin to take note and say, okay, this is how I'm going to accomplish this goal bit by bit. So each one that's accomplished, you tick it. So that's accountability. Right. So now we move on to the next one that talks about how then can you apply self-management. Self-management is more like taking your work as though it is your own private business, taking the task that have been given to you as you take ownership as though it is your own, because it has been allotted to you, and whatever comes out of it, if it is a failed project, if it's a failed task, the blame comes on you because you handled it. So you have to take it up with the boss mentality, with your own as with ownership mentality. That is one way of applying self-management. Then we'll go ahead to talk about implementing and managing self-control or self-regulation. Of course, you have to understand, now you understand self-management, so you apply that control and you apply regulation from time to time, such that when someone intentionally wants to get you angry or wants to get you off guard, you understand that this is what this person wants to accomplish, and you're not going to just give in to that because of your constant or your awareness on self-management. Then we'll go ahead to talk about being proactive, accountable, and as well as taking up responsibility. So it means that you're going to be proactive. So at the workplace or within the social space, you are proactive about what needs to be done, and you're doing it the way it needs to be done. You are accountable for it, and you're also taking up responsibilities with regards to self-management. Then we'll go ahead to the final point. It says excellent use of initiative and creativity with discipline. Of course, this is use of initiative. Like in the workplace, you are given a task, you have a designation, a position. So you don't just sit down because you've been given a designation, you've also been given a responsibility / daily task. And it's going to be executed. You don't need to be reminded that this is what you're supposed to do. You deliver on that. This is your target every single day. And you have to accomplish that. You don't need to be pushed around. You don't need to be policed around by a supervisor in order to execute your goals. So you have to execute the set goals for your designation, for your position, or for your role. It's very imperative. All these form the key ways that self-management can be applied, and various other examples as well. Then now let's talk about the dimensions of self-management. Have the spiritual dimension, the physical dimension, the mental dimension, the social dimension. Where spiritual dimension, of course, where you want to have a relationship with your God. Then I'm talking about physical dimension, where you have to, for instance, like you have to exercise in order to you have to exercise to have build your self-control, build like have a healthy body, have also the healthy physique to engage in your task in the workplace. That's more like self-management. That's physical as well. Now, when it comes to the other part of that is the other section of physical with regards to self-management, more like in the workplace. So you have a self-restraint. You restrain yourself physically such that you don't go physical with another person. You don't have to fight. You don't have to engage. You don't have to engage physically with someone else in the heat of an argument or in the heat of disagreement. Then mentally, self-management. You don't need to be policed around on the training you need to take, on the development capacities you need to take, the things you need to do to build your mental capacity. You don't need to be policed around. You don't need to be told, okay, this is the training. So on your own, you make out schedule. Say, okay, this is exactly what I am going to how I'm going to develop myself in the next 3 months. This is what I'm going to do. This is the trainings I'm going to take. This is the courses I'm going to take. These are the books I'm going to read. These are the tasks I'm going to execute. So it helps you to build yourself mentally. So all this will help you with self-management mentally. Then socially, you want to, for instance, you want to make friends, or you want to reach out to people, okay, about the products or the services that the organization offers. So you want to let people know, you like, that's social awareness. That's more like the part of socialization. Then let's say, for instance, you have issues with relating with people. You want to, okay, now you say, since possibly you don't know how to relate with people, or you don't know how friends, or you don't know how you have issues with relationship management. You want to take a step at a time. Okay, let's say in this month I'm going to make a new friend, or I'm going to have I'm going to make a new friend. I'm going to meet with somebody new. I'm going to talk to someone. So you are taking, yes, you have a designated task of what you want to do to improve yourself socially. That's exactly what we're talking about. Then also still under social, or still under the social part of self-management, you want to identify the key flaws that you noticed with your social life. You want to, okay, maybe you're unable to engage in conversation, or when you engage in heated conversation, you want to go physical, or you find it difficult to resolve disputes, or to resolve complaints, or to resolve a mere argument. So you want to find different ways you can work around that, such that you can relate, so you can socialize with people, relate with them without going physical. Then, okay, so this brings us to the end of this particular section. Let's go on to talk about the key areas of self-management: discipline, control, personal development, use of initiative, and responsibility. These are the 5 key areas we want to consider. Now, we talk about self-management. Discipline is very critical. For instance, you have there are individuals who are unable to control how they eat. Possibly in the when at home, the individual eats like every 10, 20, 30 minutes. Now, in the workplace, it's definitely not going to be so. You might have rules that no one eats within the workspace until it is break time. When it is break time, you go and eat. So that is where you need to exercise discipline, self-restraint. That discipline is important. Then secondly, in the workplace, it might be say, okay, no one litters the place. You don't chew gum. You don't litter the place with dirt. You don't your table, your desk needs to be clean all the time. Or if you're using a machine, it has to be cleaned. It has to be every. So there's a process. There's that disciplinary culture is there. Then you are the type that maybe a person who comes late to work, or who arrives late to an event. So it's not just going to be so in the workplace. So in the workplace, if you're going to resume by 8:30 or by 9 a.m., you have to resume at that particular time. And the way of enforcing discipline is by including sanctions. More like most people, there are deductions. When you come late 2 times, there's a deduction. When you come late 3 times, there's a deduction. For most organizations, they might set different rules. So while for some, there's a deduction, the hours or the minutes, that as much as you don't, how late you are to work, they calculate the same and make a deduction from the pay for that particular day. Then talk about control. Ability for one to control him or herself within the workplace. For instance, there's an urge to engage in conversation, or there's a conversation going on in the other department, or there's a heated argument, and you feel the urge, you want to go and listen, you want to go and engage, you want to go and get involved. So that's where control comes in. You definitely must retain control, or exercise control over yourself and over the urge. Then talk about the let's say even feeding. Maybe you have the appetite to always put something into your mouth. So while working, or you have that you have developed a culture in that direction, you might find a way to gradually put that into place, such that you don't need to do things that contravene the rules in the workplace. Then personal development. I've spoken about that with regards to mind or mental development as well. So you have to work on yourself personally. There are things you notice about yourself that you want to improve on. Let's say you don't relate well with people, you want to improve on that. Basic things, applying the things that you see. Oh, these are flaws. These are obvious flaws. You want to work on them so that they don't get you into trouble, or they don't cause problem for you in the workplace or in the society. Then we talk about if, even more importantly, we have seen where, with regards to anger, with regards to control, we've seen where anger has caused a lot of problem for people, where they can't control their anger, they can't control their words, they say things that they can't control their mouth, they say things that put them into problem, or that cause problem in the department. And because of that, they keep saying, more like people who sow the seed of discord, more like trying to say things you don't know. Your supervisor said this person said that, this person said that. Oftentimes it could cause serious problem in a department or in a team, and a manager might say, I don't want this person anymore in my team. It's causing serious problem. And there are evidences that when the problem is traced, it is what this person said, the other one said, that caused the problem. It might be anger issue. Somebody's tried to hit someone else, and someone collapses, and there's a problem, and the authorities have to be alerted and the person is arrested. These are control. So of course, these are key things that we need to work on, especially when we are with regards to emotional intelligence and self-management. Then use of initiative, very imperative. If you're going to be working in the workplace, use of initiative is important. The same thing it is for the larger society. Use of initiative is very important. Ability for an individual to think for themselves, know what to do at the right time, do what needs to be done at the right time, and also take responsibility, prepare to take responsibility for what was done at that particular time. Then finally, responsibility. So responsibility is just accountability for your actions. You decided, okay, you're going to be held accountable for your action. That is what responsibility is all about with regards to self-management. So you develop yourself to take responsibility for every of your action because you're going to be using initiative. Then that's the summary of that part 3. Let's go on to discuss social awareness in part 4 and see the details in it. So now, in this part 4, our social awareness, we'll talk about an overview of social awareness. We'll consider, we'll have various considerations in social awareness, then the concerns of social awareness. Then we'll go ahead to discuss the steps to improve our social awareness. Now, what is social awareness? It is the ability of an individual to take on perspectives of others and also adequately empathize with individuals of diverse background and cultural origin with regards to values, tradition, communication, learning, learning styles as well, and lifestyle, etc. So I'll take the second definition and explain both of them together. Social awareness is also a shared consciousness that creates a rule for adjustment to social or ethical norms in respect to behaviors, productivity, economic, and community relations. So, social awareness is very important for an individual because what? It enables the ability, it provides the ability to an individual to understand that one, that there are perspectives to life, and every single individual that makes up that society or that makes up that community sure has rights to have their own perspective and have their own opinion. They have a right to their perspective and they have a right to their own opinion. And these individuals stem from different and diverse backgrounds, cultural origin, and they also have values. They have their traditions, they have their method of communication, and as well as they understand, they have a learning style and a lifestyle amongst many. Now, this is imperative because if you're relating with someone in the workplace, it's important that you know, okay, that every single person must not see things from your own perspective. Every single person must have an origin, have a culture that is acceptable to them, where they are coming from. So they must not see things from your own perspective. It means social awareness means that you're going to be prepared because you've been equipped with that ability to understand them and understand them from their own perspective and as well as empathize with them because they are coming from a different background and cultural heritage that are different from yours. So that's what makes the society rich, makes the workplace rich, because the workplace is a collection of people from different background, different cultural heritage, different origins, different cultures, different traditions, communication styles, and etc. So let's go on to talk about discuss more what social awareness will do for you. So it enables an individual to understand and react adequately to different social confrontations. So when a person is confronted in the society, you want to understand, oh, this person I'm discussing with, or this person I'm interacting with, where exactly is this person from? How do they think? How do they perceive this? Or if you're going to be having a conversation with someone with regards to a particular topic, that topic might be a very sensitive one from the perspective where that person is coming from, be a perspective of religion, a perspective of culture, of race, or whatever it is. Then secondly, it might also be it also promotes the consistency in adjust that is it consistently adjust that gives the individual ability to constantly adjust interaction with the society, such as the people, the culture, the value, the norm, etc., in order to achieve an expected result. For instance, you want to go and relate with a client. You have a client to meet with, so you want to understand where is this person from. Maybe you want to dress like the client, you want to identify with that client with regards to their dress code, their culture, or their cultural dress code, or maybe it's you understand the language. You want to identify with that client with their language. So this is in order to achieve the expected result. Now you are interacting with a client, because of course there are certain professions that allow you to do so because of the goal or the objective that is to be achieved. For instance, in sales, in marketing, it is very, very much promoted that if you can connect in whatever way you can connect with your target market, connect with them such that you can have the desired result. That is one of the rules in marketing and in sales as well. So now let's go ahead to talk about the various considerations in social awareness. Now we have emotions, have experiences, perspectives, cooperation, people and identity, support. And so these six key considerations are the things that we're going to focus on in the next slide, so we can discuss in details how emotions, experience, perspective, cooperation, people and their identity, then support, how they influence or how they can greatly impact social activities. Now let's start with emotions. Identifying, so as an individual that's interacting with their social space, like in your workplace or in the larger society, you need to identify emotional expression in others. So when people express their emotions, you need to identify it. You need to properly label that emotions. Very important. You also need to analyze how behaviors affect people's emotions. Of course, behaviors affect people's emotions. Identify how your own behaviors also affect people's emotions. So first of all, you are identifying how the behaviors of each individual could affect their own emotions, and identifying how your own behaviors can affect other people's emotions. Then on fourth one, you have to recognize and identify how to make necessary adjustments with regards to emotions. Then we'll talk about and non-verbally, and situational cues with emotions. More importantly, such that what is being said, what is not being said, and the circumstances with which what was said was said. You want to connect them together so you can have a better understanding of what actually transpired. For instance, if a conversation went on between two people and you are let into the details of that conversation, you just don't want to pay attention to what was said. You want to also pay attention to what was not said, and you also want to pay attention to the circumstances that led to that conversation, because it is imperative. Else, you'll be missing out on vital details of that conversation. So if you are the one having that conversation, so you also need to pay attention to the verbal cues, non-verbal cues, and the solution and the situations that surround that conversation. Now let's go on to talk about experience. Surely, experience do affect people with regard. It affects how people relate with their society and with others in their society. Now, you need to recognize the fact that people experience situations differently. Now, with regards to if a situation, for every situation, people experience it differently because they will give you their own perspective. And now, that's what helps us to have a variety or a rich pool of opinion. When an issue occurs, every single person will analyze it from their own perspective and give them to you. So you understand that, because so they're going to be experiencing every single situation differently. So for every situation that occurs, you had your own experience your own, like you have your own experience of that situation differently. The same way it is for every single one who experienced that situation with you. Secondly, you need to also prepare and anticipate people's response or reaction to specific situations. For every situation, there's going to be a reaction. So there's in a workspace or whatever. Let's say, for instance, a word was said. You definitely should prepare for a reaction. It might be a positive reaction or a negative reaction, whichever one it is. So you want to prepare that you only have positive reaction when there's for every situation that you get yourself in. Then we talk about differentiate between facts and emotion in every situation. I think we've made reference to this, such that you don't mix up the facts and emotions. Facts are different from emotions. So, for instance, if you're having a conversation with someone, ensure that your own emotion does not becloud your ability to, or your ability to see or to distinguish facts from your emotions in that conversation. So you understand that the fact this is what it is, and not necessarily judging the situation from your emotion. Then, finally, on this list of experience, you need to understand that past experiences of people affect their approach to social and their approach to social life and situations. For instance, people go through a lot in life. So how they react is also a part of how the experiences they've had in the past. Let's take, for instance, someone who has lived in a fraud-prone environment. If you are to relate to such a person, it's going to also be seeing whatever you do from that prism, from that perspective. And whatever their opinion will always be from that perspective until they have tried and tested and confirmed that there is no fraud from your own perspective, from what you want to do. So that's more like that. From another perspective, a person who has a violent experience or a violent past will always view every single activity from the place of from that violent prism. So it is imperative that that we understand these things and how they can impact a person's emotion, a person's emotional intelligence. Now let's go on to talk about perspectives and opinion. So now a person's perspective, so perspectives and opinion, understand how understand people from their own perspective. So people have perspectives, they have opinion. So and their opinion matters. Their opinion counts. So it is imperative that you understand this, that people are entitled to their own opinion, people are entitled to their own perspective, and with recourse, you should pay close attention to help to accept what they have said or to accept their perspective. You have to be prepared to accept the perspective of every single person or the people you interact within your own society. Then we'll go ahead to talk about predicting feelings and perspective in varying situations. So for every situation, there's going to be feelings and perspectives. So as long as people are involved in that particular situation, there's going to be feelings and perspectives because they're coming from diverse backgrounds, they're coming from diverse culture, they're coming from diverse they have their own diverse experiences. So it's definitely going to impact their opinion and their perspective with which they see or which they view or that particular issue or that particular situation. Then we're going to be comparing, the next one says compare between multiple perspectives on a subject. So you need to compare between multiple perspectives in any subject at all. So if if you're having an opinion pool, like you have a team meeting or amongst colleagues, or you have a conversation amongst colleagues, you have to be prepared to compare opinions or to be open to multiple opinions or multiple perspectives. So it's not like a closed opinion or a narrowed opinion. In fact, when you even have a narrowed opinion or perspective or a narrowed pool of opinion or perspective, then there's an issue. It means possibly other people are not thinking out of the box. So one person cannot say one thing and everybody is saying, oh yes, oh yes, oh yes. Even no matter how amazing it is, people should be able to give a little bit of objection review the objection, and at the end of the day, come up with something that is like we disagree to agree. Of course, when we disagree, we try to reason along the lines and see what needs to be done and how it can be better appropriated. Then we'll go ahead to talk about use of questioning. So it is imperative that as individuals, we can use questioning to drive and understand other people's perspective. So, for instance, having a conversation or having a team conversation, so it's imperative that as an individual you use questioning to understand or to drive your ability to understand other people. So don't assume. It means that you don't assume that you understand the person until you can use questioning to understand the person. So even in the case where you already understand, but you want to be very certain that you understood the person, or you don't even understand the person, so you can use questioning to ensure that you understand the other people who are involved, or the other parties that are involved in that conversation. You understand their perspective. Then we'll go ahead to talk about express understanding and show regard to those with different perspective. Very, very imperative that for every conversation, you need to express your understanding of the fact that people are entitled to their own perspective. People are entitled to their own opinion, and that you respect that fact that people are entitled to their own opinion and to their own perspective. Then you also need to show that regard to those opinion, or to show that regard that you understand the fact that people are entitled to their own opinion. This is very much important because it helps for team bonding, team building, and teamwork within the workplace. And when it comes to the larger society, it helps for relationship management. It helps for cohesion within the social space, such that you can it boosts relationship, and you can easily and effectively relate with others within your social space. Now, let's go on to talk about cooperation. It's imperative to understand that there are stereotypes in the society, and there is discrimination in the society and bias as well with regards to communities. So people already have their own bias formed, or they have it is what they discriminate. So of course we work daily on ourselves individually to avoid discrimination and also to avoid bias. So this is more like a conscious effort on each individual that they work on themselves to improve on. So, but as individuals, you need to understand the fact that stereotype will definitely play out, discrimination will definitely play out, and bias will definitely play out. So you don't expect 100% cooperation in a community, or in your social space, or in the workspace, or even as your team members. You don't expect your entire team members to always cooperate with you. You don't expect your entire team members to always agree with you, of course. So this takes us, so with that understanding, it helps you to prepare for rejection. It helps you to prepare for engagement, how you can effectively engage with your team members to achieve the desired result. Then secondly, we'll talk about appreciate the need for difference in opinion and qualities. So it means that there is always a need for differences in opinion and quality. Remember I said earlier that when there's a conversation, like a team conversation or a team bonding, and there is a different perspective are not coming up, people are not opening up, or people are not saying, or even when people open up to say something, they are repeating the same thing. It means that there's a problem. It's either that the team is narrow-minded, or that the team members lack ideas on the subject, or they definitely are withholding, or intentionally are withholding their ideas on the subject. Then thirdly, use respectful words in handling conflict, and as well as differences in opinion. So in order to boost cooperation among team members, or even in the larger social space, use of respective words is very, very imperative. So as an individual, how you relate with your peers, your colleagues, your supervisors, your managers, your superiors, and even the clients of the organization and the larger society is very imperative. Use of respectful words can help handle conflict. So in the place of conflict, yes, there's a conflict of ideas, there's a conflict of interest, there's a conflict of this. There might be a lot of conflict. So, but the question still remains that the subject still remains that in the face of that conflict, there has to be respect, mutual respect. So you have to respect, continuously respect whoever it is you're having a conflict with until it is the opinion or the differences in opinion is resolved. Then we'll go ahead to talk about collaboration. Collaboration with peers to identify, understand, and respond to social needs. Of course, so you must be prepared to collaborate with your peers. Collaboration aids learning. Collaboration aids improvement. Collaboration aids the ability to identify, understand, and respond to others. So if you don't collaborate with others, or if you don't, collaboration actually helps bridges the gap, so you could easily relate with the people or your peers or people, your team members or people within your social space, such that you could identify, understand, and respond to their social needs effectively well. So this will definitely help with cooperation with regards to social awareness. Now, let's go ahead to talk about people and identity. Now, identity is very strategic because identity is you have to identify people's positive values or qualities. Now, when you relate with people, it is imperative that you look out for the positive values in them, the positivity in them, the great things that they could do, the great qualities. You want to focus on that and not on the downsides of their qualities or of their identities. Then, secondly, you need to also appreciate the fact that people have diversity in religion, culture, value, and language. Every single person does on the planet does not have the same religion, the same culture, the same values or language. So it is very, very important because these are sensitive issues to social awareness. So it is imperative that as an individual, you have to appreciate that fact, and appreciating it means that you're preparing your mind to accommodate others with regards to their religion, to their culture, values, languages, etc. Then, thirdly, understand the sensitivity of culture, religion, and values. So you understand it, you're appreciating the fact, one. Then, secondly, now you're moving on to understand the fact that these subjects or these things are very sensitive and it could ignite chaos in the workspace, and you don't want to be the one who ignites that chaos because it definitely would have consequences. So you need to understand that these are sensitive issues and you don't need to joke around them within the workspace or in the social space as well. Then we'll go ahead to talk about the fact that you need to recognize that cultural norms and social cues affect people's interaction. So how people are definitely going to relate with you, socialize with you, or interact with you stems from their cultural norm and also their social cues. Now, it means this is like when you hear people say, this is how we do it, or this is how I have learned to do it, or this is the way I do my things. That's more like a cultural norm for them. So you need to understand the fact that people always have a cultural norm, the way they do their things, and you want to appreciate that fact and build your relationship with such individuals. Now, we go ahead to talk about the fact that identity, also pay attention to identity similarities and differences in individuals, culture, and society. So, like a workplace which is a convergence of people of diverse culture and religion, backgrounds, different heritages. So you want to while you relate with each person within the workspace, you want to also identify similarities and differences. So you don't just go ahead and relate with every single person. Oh, possibly, oh, this is the same kind of person, or this is the same kind of person. You just go ahead and say, oh, you just people still have their own differences and their similarities, even within the same culture or within the same society. People can vary. So you want to pay attention to that fact that there could still be similarities and there could still be differences even within cultures and within religion, and so on. So now let's go ahead to talk about support. in this next point, in this next slide. So we'll talk about recognize the fact you have to recognize needs among people, recognize needs, the when and the how people request for help. Now, with regards to support in a social space, like in a workspace, take for instance, you have a colleague who needs to use a printer and says, oh, I need to print a document and I'm having issues with this printer, and in fact I just need to send this mail, I need to send this mail right, I need to send it away to dispatch this mail right now, and you're saying, okay, I'm going to be with you in the next 2 hours, and since that mail is of urgent request, you are definitely not helping or providing that support to that particular person. Of course, you definitely want to provide support, but it's convenient for you to provide that support in the next 2 hours. So that means you're definitely not providing that support, because that person is definitely, their colleague or whoever it is, definitely going to go get that support elsewhere, so that they can beat the deadline that they have. So, meaning, if you're going to provide support and it is convenient for you, you provide it when, and you need to identify when that need arises. I also need to provide it when, and I also need to know when it is needed to provide that support and how you could do it such that you actually meet the need of such individual. Then we'll go ahead to talk about recognize qualities and as well as values of peer influence or pressure. So with regards to support, you might be expecting support from different quarters, let's say within the workspace, or different quarters within the social space, and support does not come. So but you need to understand the fact that peer pressure, there are peer pressures and peer influences that might influence them as well. So it necessarily does not mean that such person is not on your support list or does not want to support you. So, but that means that there are peer pressures and there are peer influences. So, meaning if you definitely would need their support, you have to prepare and work on their peer pressure, on their peer influences. That's more like what we see with brands using influencers to influence the market. That's a perfect example for that. Then let's go ahead to talk about identify people you can trust, and as well as set benchmarks and limits. So in the bid to in this support system, you just definitely wouldn't just provide the support the way you anyhow you want it, but you need to first of all identify people you can trust while relating with people, identify people you can trust, and as well as when in trusting people, you need to set benchmarks. Benchmarks more like, how do you begin to trust people? So you don't just meet with a stranger and start trusting. You don't just get to the workplace and start trusting. You don't just get into the social space and start trusting. It means you need to test. You might set your test standard and how you intend to build that trust, or how you intend to manage the trust or test the trust. So that's you need to set that. Then also finally you set a limit to that trust. So the trust level you have, there ought to be a limit to it. Then we'll go ahead to talk about understand the fact that people appreciate support more when it is requested. This fourth point is very, very vital, because there is a fact that when people are supported without the support being requested for, they less appreciate it. It's just like it's a common thing which has been proven by research, where when people request for support or for help, they appreciate it more because they initiated that particular support. That does not necessarily mean that when people do not request that they do not appreciate, but it is most appreciated. It is supports are most appreciated when it is requested. Then the fifth point helps us understand that we need to recognize that help or support must not always be reciprocated. So now, if you want reciprocity, you need to have an agreement, or you need to have a contract such that this is going to be reciprocated when you need it. So that is for reciprocity. So you don't just believe or think that there's going to be reciprocity because you provided support. No, that does not work that way. So in a social space, everyone comes with different values. They come with different background, from diverse background, diverse cultural heritage. So you want to also prepare yourself with the fact or with that knowledge that when you provide help or you provide support, it necessarily may not be reciprocated always. Okay, now let's move on to the next slide. I talked about that, so we are done with this particular portion. So let's talk about the concerns, the key concerns with social awareness. So what should we be concerned about? What things that should we put on top priority with regards to social awareness. So when you're relating with people, top on the list, it's very, very imperative that you prioritize trust. In the social space, trust is an expensive commodity. It doesn't just come cheap. People do so much in order to earn trust. Businesses do so much in order to earn trust. Brand do so much in order to earn trust. So that's why, as an individual, as an employee, you need to be very careful to maintain the trust level, and not just to maintain the trust level, but to maintain and improve on the trust level of your organization, of your workplace with their customers. Then on the social space, you also need to improve your trust level of people with you. Then even in the workspace, your colleagues, your trust level with colleagues, and as well as your supervisors, such that there is trust. So trust is an essential commodity in the social space, and it is not just essential; it is also very, very expensive, in the sense that when it is lost, then it is always very it's an uphill task to rebuild again. Then let's go ahead and talk about emotions. Emotions are very, very critical in the social space. That's why you need to be very aware, socially aware with regards to emotions. You want to know want to say what and what not to say at a particular time. It is very imperative. The things you say at this particular time, it can be very, very disastrous. At a particular time, can be very disastrous when said, or can be misconstrued at a particular time because of the timing. So now it is imperative, the timing and as well as the situation or the condition on ground. So you need to pay close attention about the emotion in the space or in the atmosphere or in the social space or in the workspace. For instance, let's say there's a heated atmosphere in the workspace and you're still saying sensitive things, not paying close attention to other people's emotions. It's very, very imperative that it could cause chaos within the workspace or in the social space. Now let's go on to talk about the third one that talks about empathy. When relating with the social space or the workspace, it is imperative that you pay close attention to empathy. Learn to empathize with others, because this improves your relationship, your perception, the perception of your personality, the kind of person that you are, and such that it does not label that individual or whoever is involved as selfish. Then we'll go ahead to talk about sensitivity. Sensitivity is very important, like we related sensitivity with emotions. Very, very imperative, such that within the social space, sensitivity is imperative because you're able to sense or to know when the situation is tensed or the situation is unpalatable, to have certain kinds of conversation, difficult conversation, or difficult resolutions, or to resolve certain conflict. So sensitivity is very, very imperative. Then in social space, when it comes to awareness, diversity is important. It is imperative to know that diversity is important because because there are multiple people within the social space or in the workplace. The workplace is like a convergence of multiple people from diverse background and with different cultural heritage. Then we'll go ahead to talk about respect. Now, in the social space, it is important that you are very aware of respect, that you need to pay close attention and respect others, respect the opinion of others, respect the perspective of others, respect whatever others do. So you need to respect others as you respect yourself as well. So because it is reciprocated, you respect others, you get your respect back. So that is what it is within the social space. So now, and that social space has an inclusion of the workspace in it. So that's when it is imperative that we deal with this. Then we'll go ahead to talk about perspective. It is imperative that to know that in the social space, perspectives are important. People have their perspective, and the fact is that they are entitled to their own perspective, and they are entitled to their own perspective and as well as their own opinion. So they are entitled to have an opinion from their own perspective. Of course, their opinion stems from their perspective. So we are, as individuals, relating with socially relating with our environment, or relating socially with our community, we need to pay close attention to perspective and understand the fact that every single person has, or every single individual within our social space has or is entitled to perspective and as well as to opinion. Now, this brings us to a conclusion on this part. So now let's move on to consider how then can we improve our social awareness. One of the key ways is to censor nonverbal cues. Censoring nonverbal cues does not necessarily mean that you are going to not you're definitely not going to censor the verbal cues. But more importantly is the fact that people pay close attention to what is being said and what is not said. Importantly is that the people there's you need to censor what is said, what is not said, and as well as the situation with which what was said was said. These are key things that needs to be that needs to be prioritized, but you must censor the nonverbal cues. A practical example in this censoring of nonverbal cues in the workplace. Let's take for instance, there's a person with living with disability within their workspace. How you relate with that person, there's a non-palatable non-verbal cue might be picked from your relationship with such a person in such space. So and it might strain the relationship. For instance, now let's also take for instance, let's say people it might be maybe an individual who has problem with people with obese. So you don't that's by strain, so that their attitude or their attitude around such individuals might strain their relationship, which are non-verbal cue. They haven't said anything, they didn't say nothing to such individual, but their attitude around people, let's say people with living with disability or people with obese, by just the attitude might be non-palatable, and it's definitely good. It's passing on some information and which would strain the relationship. Then we'll go ahead to talk about the second portion that says ask for honest feedback from trusted friends. Of course, the trusted friends can give you the key feedback, things to improve on, or things you need to improve on yourself, so you can better relate with others. Then we'll go ahead to talk about familiarize with behaviors and values in communities. So you need to understand what community do you find yourself. For instance, if you find yourself in a global community, like you have a global workforce, and you find yourself in such community, it means you have people of diverse race, diverse nationality, diverse culture, diverse languages, diverse backgrounds, diverse heritage, different diverse views, perspective on issues. So we definitely will not agree on things. Some of us might decide to be critical with our analysis, and some might decide not to be critical. So it is very, very imperative that you're going to be socially aware of this, and you have to prepare to accept people because they will definitely have their own perspective and opinion with regards to this. So but you have to familiarize yourself with their behaviors and as well as their values in this new community that you have found yourself. Then we'll go ahead to talk about identify and differentiate situations with reaction. So now you have to identify and differentiate different situations. For instance, the hearsays within workspaces or within the social spaces, you need to identify and differentiate them very well. You need to know which of them are reactionary, which of them are emotional, which of them are factual, and you need to also identify the situations or the circumstances surrounding them so that you can effectively have a better way to react to them. Then finally, you need to also prepare to assume ownership and responsibility for your behaviors. So if you want to improve your social awareness, you definitely would prepare to assume ownership and responsibility for your behaviors within your social space. Now, this takes us on to part 5. How then do we manage relationship through emotional intelligence? Now we'll talk about an overview on the subject. Then we're also going to be considering the relationship management benchmarks as well as the key ways to improve on relationship management. Now let's go ahead and consider relationship management. So it's more like a bond with others. So how you decide to bond with others is your way of managing relationship. So how party A decides to manage relationship with their social space will be definitely different from how party B might decide to manage relationship, or Mr. A or Mr. B might decide to manage relationship with their social space. Of course, You have different relationship managers in an organization, and how they choose to manage their clients will definitely provide the results that they are looking for. So relationship management is how an individual decides to bond with others, involving clarity in communication, effectively handling of conflict, and as well as use of emotional awareness and those of others to successfully manage an interaction. So, meaning a relationship management is how you choose to bond with others, how you choose to communicate with them in a more clear way, such that there is clarity and there is no confusion. Then you also how you intend to manage conflict, or how you decide to manage conflict with those people in your social space. Then how you decide to also use their emotional awareness and that of your own emotional awareness to manage the interaction all through the life cycle of that relationship. Then we'll go ahead to talk about that is the second definition of emotional intelligence. Relationship management in emotional intelligence is your ability to effectively use your awareness of your own emotions and that of others to effectively manage interaction. I think this is a summary of what relationship management is in EQ. So very, very imperative to summarize here that it is the awareness of your own emotions and that of others to effectively manage an interaction. Then, of improving relationship, or ways to improve relationship management. One of the key ways is openness. Being open in that relationship is very imperative. So, openness, be open, be honest, and trustworthy. Now, we'll talk about being open, honest. You say the way it is, then trustworthy, meaning that you're consistently working to earn the trust, to keep the trust, to earn the trust, and to retain the trust, and not just only to retain the trust, but to grow that trust level. Then, secondly, is to respect yourself and also respect others as well. So, oftentimes you find people so you find people who may not, who have less respect for themselves and more respect for others, or who have more respect for themselves and less respect for others. So, but in relationship management, you need a balance for it, because it is imperative that you respect yourself and as well as respect others within the social space as regards relationship management. Then we'll go ahead to talk about communication. That's you have to communicate and collaborate effectively. So, but communication here practically means an understanding, a mutual understanding of information, or a mutual information sharing, a mutual understanding of information of what was said, how what needs to be done as a result of that communication. So each party needs to understand what was said and what the actions that are accrued to the information or to what was communicated as well. Then collaboration. You need to also prepare for collaboration. That you prepare your mind to collaborate with more frequently with your social space. Now, a social space, remember, we're considering even the workplace, the team, maybe you have a field team, field work. You're also going to prepare for collaboration as well. Then on the fourth line, we'll talk about respect. Respect the opinion and suggestions of others. So if you are having a team meeting, so definitely every single person will have an opinion, every single person will have a perspective and will want to make a suggestion. So you don't shut down people for their opinion, you don't shut down people for their perspective. Their perspective might be inadequate, but less than that, you still need to appreciate them for contributing, because it is the diversity of opinion and perspective that creates the rich pool of opinion from which ideas are built. So if an organization will survive or will thrive effectively well, or a social space will thrive effectively well, then there will be that opportunity for everyone to bring up their opinion, their perspective, and such that there's a pool of diverse opinion, of rich and diverse opinion, and there can be a conclusion from that. Then finally, on this line, we talk about practice. Practice active listening, be assertive, and as well as conflict management. So now, to improve relationship or to improve your management of relationship, you have to understand the fact that you practice active listening. So when you're having a conversation with someone, the conversation is not just ended and you're asking, please, what did you just say? Can you just repeat again? Meaning you were not even there, you didn't even understand. But more importantly, active listening is listening to things that was said and things that was not even said. So meaning you're paying attention to the verbal cues, non-verbal cues, and even the situational cues as well. That is active listening. Then we'll go ahead to talk about assertiveness, being very, very assertive. You want to ask questions, you want to understand, much more, you want to use questioning skills to understand much more better on the subject. Then talk about conflict management. You need to have a better style to conflict management when you relate in your social space or within your workspace. Then have the better approach to conflict management. Now, this brings us to the key concerns with relationship management. What should we be concerned about when we talk about relationship management? One of them on the top priority is sensitivity. We've discussed this over and over again, so I'm not going to stress much on this. It's sensitivity. Then we talk about interest, talk about communication, empathy, questioning, and concluding on it is conflict management. So what I just do a run through on the 6 points, which includes sensitivity. Now, in relationship management, it is imperative for you to understand the fact that that there is sensitivity, especially in the social space where we know that we have diverse backgrounds, cultural origins, we have opinions, we have perspectives, we have previous experiences. So it means that there is the space is overly sensitive. The space, that social space, is very, very sensitive. We see within the work, an example of the workspace there is a convergence of people from multicultural backgrounds. So it means it is a sensitive space. And whatever is said there is very important, or whatever actions are taken there is very, very important and will be viewed from diverse prisms. Then we'll go ahead to talk about interest. In every single relationship, every party involved has interest, and that interest must be protected. So if that means it has to be a win-win. But in a case where there's just a win for a party, there's definitely no relationship. The relationship will definitely strain and it might crumble. So then it's imperative also that that meaning that we have to work to safeguard the interests of others within the relationship with us. Then go ahead to talk about communication. Communication is very imperative. I just talked about communication being effective sharing of information such that each party understands what was said, how it was said, what needs to be done, that actions that needs to be taken, and so on. That's effective communication is a top concern in relationship management. Meaning if there's going to be consistency, then let that consistency continue. If there's going to be how that information is going to be shared, the medium with which the information is going to be shared, going to be passed across, is very imperative. Then we'll go ahead to talk about empathy. Empathy is very much important, such that the other party does not get selfish. Every single one understands how the other persons feel every party understands how the other party feels within the relationship, and wants to improve the experiences of each person's or the other party within the space. More like you care for me, I care for you within the relationship management. So each party cares for the other. Then we'll go ahead to talk about questioning. Questioning is very, very imperative with regards to relationship management. So if I don't understand you, I need to ask questions to understand you. So, and when I ask questions, you need to also ask questions to understand me. So that is what that's where relationship questioning comes in relationship management. Questioning is very, very strategic. It's very key, and how it is asked and when it is asked, it's also very important, such that the questioning is met with adequate information and adequate reply that is also suiting to the answer to the question that was asked. Then finally, in the concerns and the list of relationship management, conflict resolution or conflict management is imperative. So to manage a relationship, you need to be prepared that you're going to work to resolve conflict. So you're not just going to walk away in the face of conflict, or you're not just going to pull away in the face of conflict. So you are prepared to resolve conflict. As much as there's transparency and there's mutual understanding, or that each parties are willing to come to the negotiating table, then you are willing to negotiate, you're willing to resolve the conflict, That's what strengthens and build a relationship. So this forms this key 6 points forms the major concerns with relationship management in the social space. So now let's talk about sensitivity. Now, sensitivity, we're going to discuss this in details. These key 6 points that we just talked about, we listed them. Now, let's begin to consider them more detailedly. Now, to work with sensitivity, you need to identify your level of sensitivity to emotions or in relationship. For instance, where there's for every relationship, you're having you but like there's a conversation ongoing and it's getting heated, so you understand your threshold for arguments, you understand your threshold for that particular conversation, you just want to walk away so that it does not get physical. Then secondly, you want to identify your ability to recognize various emotions. So while there's a conversation or while there's an engagement or there's an interaction, you want to pay close attention to emotions. Very emotional state, very, very important. Then talk about the next one, learn how your own emotions affect your relationship or your community. So then we'll move on to talk about understudy how your sensitivity affects others in the relationship. Then finally, recognize the need to reduce you need to reduce or increase your sensitivity. So if you are overly sensitive such that others can't give opinion, others within the relationship or your fellow team members can't give you feedbacks, positive or negative reviews, then there's an issue. So you need to understand or need to work on yourself on how to reduce or increase your sensitivity. Okay, now let's go on to the next one that talks about interest. I said earlier that for every relationship amongst teams, within the workplace or social space, there are interests. Every single one has, every single party in the relationship has interest. So now, and that interest needs to be safeguarded. So first of all, you need to identify your level of interest on that is amongst the other people amongst the party in that relationship, such that your interest does not conflict with that of others, and there's a mutual protection of interest. Then it goes ahead to talk about identify or communicate your own level of interest. Of course, you need to find a palatable way to communicate your level of interest, such that it does not portray you as selfish. So it does not portray you as me, myself, and I. It's just you. Then it has to be a mutual win-win for every single person. Then we'll go ahead to talk about measure your own interest as against others in the relationship, so that your interest does not always come up all the time. It's not just all about you all the time. It does always not more like you have within the relationship, the stake levels and the interest is more like 80 to 20. So there's no balance. It definitely will not sustain that relationship. Those relationships might not be sustainable over time. So they find a way to make a balance. So if you're the 80 or the 20, then there will have to be a balance such that it could be 50-50 even within the social space or within the workspace, as long as it concerns interest. Then we'll talk about understand how your own interest affects you and that of others in the relationship. Now, how you go about your own interest. So it has to be me, myself, and I. So when you're having a conversation, it's all about you. So you don't want your interest to rub off so much on you, such that it beclouds the reasoning, it beclouds your conversation, it beclouds because a consistency in this will portray such individual as selfish. Then we'll go ahead to talk about, which is the last line, talks about recognize the need to reduce or increase your level of interest. So meaning if the interest is so high, you need to step it down and increase the interest of others so you could have a balanced relationship. That is that. So because if the relationship is unbalanced or the interest level is unbalanced, then you have a situation where a party might decide to pull away from that relationship, or might become redundant in that relationship and allow the party with the biggest interest to be the driver and to bear the burden of the relationship. Okay, this takes us to the next one that talks about communication. I stressed earlier about communication, so you need to identify your own pattern of communicating to others in that relationship. So how others choose to communicate and how you communicate in that relationship. So you need to identify your own pattern of communication and how others also communicate in that relationship. Then also recognize the preferred communication pattern of others who are involved in that relationship. So every single person who is involved in that relationship, you need to understand how their preferred pattern of communication. Then we'll go ahead to talk about understand the effectiveness or the effectiveness of that process of communication, or does it need a change, or does it need to be improved on, or does it need to remain the way it is. So you need to also make that evaluation from time to time to understand, is it effective or is it not effective. Then go ahead to talk about gap identify the gaps in the communication process and how to fix them. Is there a gap in this communication process, and can we fix it? How can it be fixed? Should we fix it right away so the parties involved agree, so that these are gaps in in our communication process within this relationship, and it can be improved on. And these are the things that these are the steps you can take to improve on it, and each party begins to make their necessary adjustments. Then finally, on this line, we talk about measure your satisfaction level and that of others in the communication process. Very much important, where you want to find out if that method of communication within this relationship serves the interest. Does it accomplish the goal? Does it serve the interest all the time when there's a communication? So if not, do we need to do a review? Do we need to have do we need to integrate other methods or other tools of communication, possibly within the workspace, within the team members, within the for any other activities within the social space? It is very important to make this evaluation from time to time. Now, this takes us to empathy. Empathy identifies how you demonstrate empathy with others. I already stressed on that. Then you recognize emotional states, very much important, with others, and empathize within your space. So you need to recognize emotional states from time to time, also empathize with them. Then realize your emotional level of connection through empathy. Then fourthly, understand your level of empathy and also the need to reduce or to increase them. Then you also need to recognize how the relationship responds and reacts to your empathy. So oftentimes your parties involved within this relationship, how they react to that your level of empathy might be so great, or you might need to reduce on it such that it's not that you're overly bearing, or like you're nosy, or you are overly caring, or you are overly concerned about what goes on about the other party. Now, this brings us to the next one, which is questioning. Questioning helps to identify the need and the application of that is identify the need and the application of questioning in the relationship. So in every relationship, like I said earlier, that there's a need to question. So in a place where you don't understand, or you don't have a clear understanding of what to do or what needs to be done, questioning is imperative. While you're relating with your superiors, your supervisors, your colleagues, your peers, even the social space, the latter social space, there's a need to use questioning. Then, understand the use of questioning in relationship. Of course, we've talked about it, that it is imperative that questioning is used to always improve relationship with others. Then we'll talk about, so you don't just assume you understand. So meaning, if you do not understand, you ask questions. Thirdly, recognize when and how to use questioning in the relationship. So you don't ask questions when you ought not to ask questions. So it doesn't seem as though such individual does not know what to do, or appear or not to be smart. Then recognize the impact and reaction of questioning in the relationship. For most people, they have issues with responding to questions. So asking them questions can infuriate them because they have issues. So those issues, so you need to understand this. People within your space, are they okay with questioning? Can you use questioning to understand them? So if that does not work, you want to use other approach to improve on your relationship or to better understand them. Then this takes us to the last line of this on this particular point. It says identify the need to adjust, change, or improve your questioning pattern. How you choose to question. Of course, if it's an issue, or if it's creating an issue, then you need to improve, you need to adjust, make a change, or improve on your questioning pattern. Then we'll talk about conflict resolution. Identify possible sources. So now, with regards to relationship management, conflict resolution is very, very imperative, very important, and it's a necessary skill for relationship management. So now, what to do? So you identify possible sources and reasons for conflict. So you know that this. So in that relationship, you need to identify. Oh, can this thing lead to conflict in this relationship? By understanding interest, like we talked earlier. So by understanding interest, and any collision of interest will definitely stem to conflict, of course. So or any undermining of interest will lead to conflict, or any underserving of interest will definitely lead to conflict. So you need to understand this and pay close attention to them. You need to recognize the fact that you need to recognize the potentials of mismanagement and escalation. That if a relationship is mismanaged, the conflicts within it can escalate, of course. So if a conflict is mismanaged, there can be an escalation. So you need to recognize that fact, analyze impact of various conflicts on relationships, of course, then understand conflict drivers conflict drivers, and as well as affect and its effect on relationship. Then we'll go ahead to talk about identify available options and approach to conflict resolution. One particular way may not solve all the conflicts all the time, and definitely it will not solve conflicts all the time. So the way a way might be great for this particular one, and it might not be great for the next one. So you have to find out what strategy will be great to resolving this conflict or this issue on ground. Then finally, apply the use of questioning to understand intent and resolve conflict. Because there are times you think you understand the party, but until you use questioning, your questioning skills to ascertain critical information such that you understand, okay, this is exactly what the problem is, because you may be thinking that XYZ is the problem, and it might not just be the problem, it might just be a scratch on the surface. So by using questioning skills, you get to understand what exactly is the problem, what are the intents to this conflict, and how then can we resolve the conflict. Of course, with this, conflicts will definitely be managed in relationship better. Now, that summarizes that portion where we earlier talked about. Let's talk about the 5 ways we could improve relationship. One of them is be honest, be open and trustworthy. We've talked about it in the other slide, where we say respect yourself and as well as others, communicate and collaborate effectively well, respect the opinion and suggestions of others, then practice active listening, assertiveness, and conflict resolution. So we've talked about this before, so we don't need to stress about them again. So, but this definitely would help to improve relationship management. So now it summarizes that part 5 of this training. So now this brings us to the last portion of the training, which talks about moderating emotional intelligence. For every single thing that we do, it's imperative that we learn the art of moderation. Moderation is very, very imperative. So now let's go ahead. What are we going to be talking about in this moderation session? So we're going to be paying close attention on the signs of very low emotional intelligence. We'll talk about the ways we can improve low emotional intelligence. Then we'll go ahead to talk about the signs of good emotional intelligence or balanced emotional intelligence. Then we'll go ahead to talk about the signs of high, very high emotional intelligence and ways to moderate that very high emotional intelligence. Now, let's go ahead to consider the various signs of low emotional intelligence. Low emotional intelligence, one is that the ability of an individual to their inability to identify their own personal triggers. That this is one sign of emotional intelligence. So an individual who is unable to identify the personal triggers that's a major sign. So meaning any trigger could work. So you know exactly this is exactly what the triggers are. So you want to stay away from them, or you want to find a way to manage them, or even work on them. Then secondly, talk about easily offended or often that is often cover up anger. So when people constantly, or an individual often or constantly covers up anger, then that's more like a sign of low emotional intelligence. Then thirdly, we talk about quickly making assumptions. So that remember when we talk about with relationship management, why we need to use questioning to understand very well rather than making assumptions. So this that's meaning where assumption is being made, then that's a low sign. That's a sign of low emotional intelligence. Then defending them also. So when individuals make assumptions and as well as defend those assumptions vehemently without even paying close attention to understand that they are wrong or how they can be corrected. Then finally, holding grudges and never let go of other people's mistakes. So this very, of course, they have low emotional intelligence. Then we'll go ahead to talk about on this list, often feeling misunderstood, and that is having a feeling of misunderstanding, that's being misunderstood by others and having difficulty with assertion. So when an individual constantly have this feeling of being misunderstood by others, then that's mean they have low emotional intelligence and would need to work on it to boost or increase their emotional intelligence. Let's move on to the next slide. So now, ways to improve on low that can help to improve emotional intelligence. One is to passive assertive communication. So now, the individual involved is going to use questioning more, is going to use investigative strategies such that they want to question to understand their parties in that relationship. They use questioning skills, they ask questions where so they don't make assumptions. Then they go ahead not to react so quickly. They want to understand the situation first before they react. So they want to react, they don't react, but they respond to conflict. Then we'll go ahead to talk about stay positive. So for such individual with low emotional intelligence, they need to work on staying positively by eliminating every single thing that will stir up the negative thoughts or negative feelings within their space. So, and also stay motivated and take criticism. They work on themselves to take criticism. We'll definitely get to that point where we could work on taking criticism. How can an individual work on themselves in order to take criticism? We'll get to that in the later part of the slide. Then we'll work on, then talk about apply active listening and empathize with others. We've talked about this. I'll stress so much on this. Then finally, practice self awareness and build a social personality. So such that you want to practice self-awareness consistently. So all that we have discussed under self-awareness, such individual will have to go pay close attention about that and improve on that. Now let's talk about the good signs of emotional intelligence. Now it talks about self-protection. So there's this level of self-protection from emotional sabotage. So you don't sabotage yourself emotionally. You want to protect yourself. You want to protect yourself mentally. You want to protect yourself psychologically from emotional sabotage. So you don't just allow your emotions to play on you all the time. So you don't allow your emotions to get a better side of you or to take charge of your conversation or your relationship with others. You want to keep your emotions away from the fact. So remember when we talked earlier, when we talked about creating clearly making a difference between facts and emotions. So you know, oh, this is the emotion, this all these are emotions and all these are facts. So we want to work with facts and not emotions. Then go ahead to talk about concern about people's feeling and also helpful. So now you're also concerned about the emotions of others. You're concerned about the feelings of others. So that's a good sign of emotional intelligence. Then we'll go ahead to talk about allowing for criticism, showing authenticity, and as well as demonstrating empathy. So when such individual disallows criticism or is unable to take criticism, then there's an issue. So, but now such individual with good emotional intelligence will allow for criticism. We also show authenticity, meaning not a fake or not a fake life or a fake personality or a fake presentation in the public and a different phase within. So such individual is authentic. It's authentic in the social space. It's authentic in the individual space. It's authentic everywhere. So now that's then demonstrating empathy when it is needed. Then we'll go ahead to talk about praising people and giving helpful feedback as well as keeping commitments. So these are very good signs of emotional intelligence, where people do not take credit for other people's work. Then people give credits to others when it is due. The workspace, don't take the credits for the work you did not do. Then in the social space, don't take credit for the work you did not do. You praise people when they do great, and also you criticize them when they don't. So then you go ahead to talk about give helpful feedback. So not like you criticize them, but you're giving them helpful feedback that can help them improve on what they are doing. So it's different from you want to criticize such a person, but this one is constructive feedback such that they can improve on that. This is exactly more like what a survey an organization pays for by going to conduct a research in the marketplace to understand or to get constructive feedback about their products, services, to their consumer. Now, also keeping of commitment. People with very good emotional intelligence understand the fact that when they don't keep with commitment, then there's an issue, there's a betrayal of trust, or there's a bruise of trust. Then there's a bruise in the relationship, and oftentimes they will need to work on the relationship for it to continue excellently well. Then we're going to talk about controlled trust and apologizing when wrong, and as well as forgiving easily. So these are signs of good emotional intelligence. Now let's talk about very high signs of very high emotional intelligence, which is unable to lead and implement drastic change. So that's what why a leader might be termed as weak. Such leader, the society terms such leader as weak, being unable to lead or being unable to implement drastic change. For instance, a supervisor might be termed that maybe where they need to give a sanction, or where they need to sanction an employee for coming late, or sanction an employee, or place an employee on probation where they don't meet with their targets and the rest of that. So all these things might be very high emotional intelligence because they are such leader is obviously concerned about how that party is going to feel, what they are feeling about the action they are about to take. Then we're going to talk about the difficulty to forgive personal mistakes, such that if an individual makes a mistake and is overly remorseful about the mistakes that they have made, even over time, so they keep going over the mistakes over and over again. So these are very signs of emotional intelligence, but they oftentimes they let go of for others, but themselves they have issues trying to forgive their own personal mistakes. So we'll go ahead to talk about creative and innovative. So these individuals with very high emotional intelligence are very creative, they're also innovative, but they're too afraid to take a step. This is one major sign. This is another major sign people with very high EQ, because they are too afraid about what if it doesn't work, or what if it works, or what will be said, or what will not be said, or what will be the review, will it be critical, will it be criticized, how will it be criticized, and so there's so much emotional intelligence around as such that it prevents such individual from execution. They are why to continuously replaying past errors and avoiding taking new risks. So when there's a continuous replay of past errors in the mind of such individuals, so there's this tendency to avoid taking new risks for them. So that these are also signs of very high emotional intelligence. They're going to talk about unable to take constructive criticism. This is very, very important. So when individuals are unable to take constructive criticism, this is a sign of very high emotional intelligence. They can't take jests and they can't take mockery. So that is that. Then we're going to talk about read meanings a lot. So such individuals who read meanings a lot, worry so much about feelings, perspectives, and opinion of others. So these are very high. These are signs of very high emotional intelligence. So what exactly can be done to address issues like this, or to address this very high emotional intelligence? So the following include ways to moderate very high emotional intelligence. So sometimes these individuals, that's why this explains what happens in the social space, where you see someone can just pop up from somewhere and criticize others constructively, and now wait for others to criticize them. So more like in the social space, where someone can just take to social media and criticize someone they know that will always clap back. So once the person claps back, okay, they use that they take that in So they know that okay, they shot the first and they are getting it back. So they go to someone else and they shoot again and they get it back. So the person gives them a commensurate and equal clap back. So that's more like their own way of moderating or of moderating their very high emotional intelligence so that they can take criticism. So they shoot first and they allow others to now shoot back so that they can now take that. Then gradually they can now begin to take it when they don't even shoot at all, and others get to criticize them even constructively and out of context as well. So that's ways some people could use. So, but this particular one is very. This is different. So we're saying a constructive criticism. So such individual should engage with constructive criticism. So in the process of constructive criticism, because when you constructively criticize other people by telling them, okay, this is how I think this is how it's supposed to be done, you give your opinion and give your own perspective. Definitely, no one is, everyone is still a perfection in progress. Meaning they are going to have their day when they will also make mistakes. So on that day, others will also criticize them or give them their own constructive feedback. That's exactly what. So when you criticize others constructively, you prepare for your own constructive criticism. That is one. Then we'll go ahead to talk about deliberately asking for people's opinion or criticism and avoid praise singers. It could be like an opinion poll where you drop out a particular thing and ask the public to advise you. Of course, you ask for an advice. Others will give you a blame. Others will call you names. So because it's a public with diverse cultural background, so you get different opinion coming from different people. So by putting yourself out and asking for different opinion and criticism, it makes it much more easier. So people just go ahead and say. So you don't just only attract praise singers, you attract the criticism that you want to help you balance your very high emotional intelligence, such that going forward you can easily relate and you can moderate your emotional intelligence and relate with others effectively well. Then, thirdly, forget the past, focus on the present and as well as the future. So this is very imperative because when the past preoccupies the mind, then there is no space for the present to play out and also the future to be conceived. Then we'll go ahead to talk about finally, forget about every forget about being very perfect. So don't try to be perfect all the time. So just take a step. You always improve, you get better as you take the step. So like a child who learns how to walk, they walk, they fall, they walk, they fall, they walk, they fall, and with time they learn how to walk and not just walk, they run. So they walk perfectly well and they start running, and that's even you have even people not just so they move from running and they sprint, they start sprinting. So that's great. So these are ways. So you just forget about being perfect, but just start, take a walk, take a step, and you see that you can improve and get better with relationship, with your emotional intelligence, with others. So now, summarily, in summarizing, so we're going to be taking these 2 points with regards to emotional intelligence. Now, emotional intelligence is an essential people skills needed in team building. Emotional intelligence is an essential people skills needed in team building. The goal and the objectives of emotional intelligence is for you to check continuously your own level of emotional intelligence and balance it with the present or the situation or the given situation. So that is the objective of emotional intelligence. So emotional intelligence is to equip you with essential people skills, then help you to also check your own emotions and that of others and balance it with the present and as well as any given situation. Then secondly, we need to also state here that extremely high emotional intelligence leads to counterproductive work behaviors. So individuals with extremely high emotional intelligence would always have counterproductive work behaviors or will always experience counterproductive work behavior because they will not be able to take steps when they need to take steps, or they always are too afraid to take initiatives or to use initiatives when they need to, and they get blamed for it or they get even sanctioned for it within the workspace. Then also there's a persistence in antisocial behaviors, then as well as impaired empathy, remorse, and stress proclivity. These are these are things that attribute themselves to extremely high level of emotional intelligence. And it brings us to a close on this. So you could always ask your questions at the comment section and we'll respond to that. So that brings us to the end of this particular training. Thank you so much for taking. I hope to see you in the next training.